us from a recent book that he read called Fierce Conversations. It has given him a new perspective on how to be the best you can be, one conversation at a time. Please welcome John Sherber with The Conversation is the Relationship.
If I held this book above my head and I started to preach to you, you might think that this is a certain type of book. And it is that type of book. This book came to me in a very innocuous way. I went to a Toastmaster training session. The trainer had 3 or 4 books that they used in the session. And then they said, oh, I don't want these. I picked up this book. Today, I'll share that with you, and I hope to inspire you. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and of course our guests. Fierce Conversations. Let me start. Susan Scott, who created the book, has been a person who has worked with top CEOs all her life. And what happened is she had worked with so many people, started her own company. People said, you've got to put this down in a book. And the first thing that she says here, you can see I love tabs. I really enjoy being able to go back. And this was a book that I lent to a friend, and I'm going, can I have that back, buddy? Oh, no. Can I have that back, buddy? It's a really profound book. So as Mark stated to you, the conversation is the relationship. It's all about truth. What happens if you tell a little white lie while you're having a conversation with somebody? What does that do to the relationship? It changes it in a very large way. Now, when I saw this, I went, fierce. What's fierce? This is an oh. But she explains why she uses fierce. And in its simplest form, a fierce conversation is one in which we come out from behind ourselves into the conversation and make it real. Now remember, she's sitting down with CEOs of organizations, and this book is a really good read because what it does is it takes you through situations that she's been in. She's got permission to be able to talk about the work that she did with these individuals, and it is profound to watch what happens when people tell the truth. One of the scariest things about being truthful, I will be known, I will be seen, and I will be changed. And they're all those things that as human beings, we protect ourselves from. So the fierce conversations, she says, that she remembers, the topics, the emotion, the expression on the faces, it was as if together we created a force field by asking questions. By saying the words out loud, things happened as a result of those conversations. A fierce conversation is like the first parachute jump from an airplane. In anticipation, you perspire. Your mouth goes dry. Once you've left the plane, the adrenaline rush is indescribable. So I want to get this across to you that when you read this book, because I know you are going to read this book, this is going to change your life. And it's something that I'm trying my best at this particular time in my life to take and enhance what I do with my life, because I work with children. And children really need, and when you have a 14-year-old get up at youth leadership and tell you that Muammar Gaddafi is a really nice guy and he did a lot of really good things, and you've got to be honest and truthful with them, and the relationship that you build with 27 other young people was just phenomenal. She tells a story about her and her brother used to have chores on Saturdays. His chore was mole whacking. So anybody that's an animal person, keep your ears plugged for this one. Because what his job was to get rid of the moles in the yard, right? So for years and years and years, every week he'd be out there, he'd be using a hose. He'd be doing all kinds of things. Years down the road, he walks into a store that somebody is buying some product, and he starts talking about getting rid of moles. And he goes, well, what do you mean? That's not going to do the moles in. He says, no, that will kill we feed that to the grubs. So when they eat the grubs, that'll kill the moles. And the guy goes, so it's those thoughts that when we have these fierce conversations, we have the ability to be able to see something from a different perspective. She talks about when we have a conversation. Consider you're a boat and you're on a lake, and there's houseboats on the lake. What kind of wake do you want to create on that lake? You can go in and charge through, and what's going to happen is everything is going to be bounced around. You're going to be held responsible for what happens. If you go in there and you feel things out, what will happen is the wake you create is going to be an effective way to be able to communicate with the individuals that you're sitting at the table with. So back to the book, she says, our instincts are not always correct. There have been certainly times when she's managed to possess an incorrect but further understanding of an issue. And sometimes she's just found herself plain lost. She had no idea what the conversation was or even pretending to be about. And at times like that, you have to say, I'm as confused as I appear to be. It's not our thought or feelings that gets us in trouble. It's not our disclosures that causes our distress. It's our attachment to them. So it's something that we as human beings tend to hold on to things really tightly. The fundamental outcome of most communication is misunderstanding. Really a need to be truthful about what we're doing. She talks about, there's a book called The Amazing Adventures of Callier and Clay. And she states that every universe, our own included, begins with a conversation. Every golem in the history of the world was summoned into existence by language, through murmuring, recital, and was literally talked into life. In Jewish legend, a golem is a creature made of clay and brought to life by magical incantations. It occurs to each of us that we've talked ourselves into our own particular universe. And that's what we think is right. When we start to communicate with other individuals, what happens is if we're truthful in that, then we start to move along the path of solving those issues. She talks about a young child who would come over. She loved the garden. And she would be planting, and there would be this child come over, and every once in a while she'd bring her violin with her. And you know what most kids are like when they get their violin or their trumpet or whatever it is. They just, let's get this over and done with. This child had the ability to be able to take that violin and play that tune. And the way she played it was that there was a break between the notes. She allowed for the silence to happen within that music. And what happens is that she says, anyone can play the notes. The magic is the interval in the phrasing. So these are all things that if we are cognizant of. I'm involved with an organization or a book, and it's called the Progoff Intensive Journal. And what happens is they always take you back to the silence to understand where is it that you're coming from, because our little old minds are so caught up in these and everything else that's going on in our world. So last but not least, she states, and she uses a lot of information from other people, and I think that's a really good thing, is that when we garner information from I can learn from Mark, I can learn from Garth, I can learn from everybody. So when Elizabeth Bird's open house, the character asked, you know what a naked star is? Stars with most of their gaseous atmosphere stripped away. And you know why they're revealed like that? Because of close encounters with other stars. And I find something very human in that, she says. This is an opportunity that, if you wish, can change your life. It's something that is probably the hardest thing that we as human beings have to do. And that's me sitting down next to Keith and having an honest conversation. Having a fierce conversation, Mr. Douglas.
John, now perhaps you could do a fierce evaluation of John's speech.